Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Maurice Philogene of podcast. And I have today someone who I've been trying to get on the podcast now for a couple of weeks, and we kept missing each other. And that's okay. Maybe we're in the best of moods today, Siri. So maybe it's like perfect, right? But I have Siri Lindley, who is a two-time world champion triathlete. I really want to get into that because I'm an athlete myself. Tried to get to the NFL. Winner of 12 ITU World Cup races. ITU is the International Triathlon Union. So that's the governing body for triathlons. The thing that really got me is that she's an inspirational, energetic life coach, and I can already feel it, and one of Tony Robbins' 8 favorite motivational speakers. That means a lot because that gentleman does not tag himself to any ragtag person. He really tags himself to people who are truly going to help people out there in the world. So that's amazing. She helps people strive for peak performance and ultimately conquer the demons and fears and self-doubt, which is really important to this podcast and my audience, because I know a lot of you have a lot of self-doubt about trying life on your way. There is a whole mess to Siri's story. So I won't get into it. I will have her introduce herself and we'll get into it. So Miss Siri Lindley, welcome to the Try Life On podcast, finally.
I have been so looking forward to this. So whatever got in the way of it, waiting until now, like you said, I think it's just the perfect time is today. And I feel so blessed to be on your podcast, Maurice, because I think you are an extraordinary human. And I can't wait to share my story because, yes, my story is all about trying the life on that I wanted to live. Yeah. Living the story in life that I wanted to live. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so super important for everyone listening to know that you get to go first in deciding what story in life you want to live. And that's up to you. And then you become that person that can live that story. But we'll get into that. But thank you. This is just subject matter that really matters to me. And I can't wait to share.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are going to see themselves in you. So tell us a little bit about where you are today, what you're working on, and I'll have us circle back to kind of origin and what happened in the past and what your journey was so people can grab onto it.
Well, right now I'm in Longmont, Colorado. I live on a horse ranch. My wife and I have a nonprofit called Believe Ranch and Rescue, where we rescue horses from slaughter for human consumption, and it's a brutal, horrific practice. And the most important thing about these beautiful horses is they're healers. We run programs, healing programs for veterans with PTSD, for people going through cancer. And so that's kind of our big hobby. It sounds like it's our whole life, but it's actually our hobby that we love.
Yeah.
And I'm finishing up writing my second book called Finding a Way, Taking the Impossible and Making It Possible. And I'm living this miracle of life. I truly believe that my being here today is an absolute miracle, and every single moment is a moment that I want to live on mission, on purpose, and with all my heart, because I think sometimes we forget just how precious this gift of life is. And I became brutally aware of that a couple years ago, and it's just been actually such a beautiful gift to now really embrace every single breath that I take.
I love it. And so one of the premises of trying life on or going after the impossible, the way you and I were talking about, I have this notion, especially when I talk to coaching students or just friends, that in life you can use the word and. You don't have to rely on or. You can be this and that. In my journey, I was an IT executive for 25 years, but I was also a street cop. I was also a federal agent. You have the Believe Ranch and Rescue, and I mentioned that you were also a triathlete. How did you become a triathlete? Where did that lead you to? Why did you do that? And just give people an understanding. And just so you know, winner of 12 World Cup races. I don't know if that's a low number and maybe there's been more, but that's what I found. That's significant. So give us a sense of what you've been doing over that time frame.
So basically, to take you way back, in college at Brown University, I was a 3-sport varsity athlete, field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse. And I loved it. It's what I excelled at. It's all my worthiness lay within how I performed on each of those fields and how I performed in my courses. And I was basically living the life that I felt I needed to be living.
Yeah.
You know, as someone excelling in sports and in academics and making my parents proud and dealing with a lot of anxiety, extreme OCD that absolutely debilitated me. And that came from a lot of pressure and putting basically all the cares of the world on my shoulders. My mom had been through a really tough divorce, and I was making up stories in my mind that it was all up to me to keep her alive. It was all up to me to make life worth living for her. And this, again, is a story I put on myself. And sometimes we have to look at those stories that we told ourselves growing up about what our parents needed or what was going on with them. And so often when I talk to my mom about this period of time, she remembers it as one of the happiest times of her life, where she was finally free and she could do all the things she wanted to do. But in my memory, I had created this story that just brought me so much pain and angst. Anyhow.
What is it that meaning you were kind of doing that college journey in her eye, like executing what she wanted you to do?
No, the college journey was mine, but the anxiety, the debilitating fear came from me trying to control everything, feeling that it was earlier on, I should tell you so that you can all understand this. 15 years earlier, my mom had been dating this guy that she eventually married, and he broke up with her. And she actually tried to take her own life after he broke up with her. And I found her. And in that moment, even though I'm 4 years old, I told myself the story that I'm not enough for her to want to stick around. That she was ready to leave us. I'm not enough for her to stick around. And so they ended up getting married. That's a whole story in itself. But 16 years later, when he asked for a divorce, even though I'm an adult and I'm in college, in my mind, I'm thinking the last time he did this, my mom tried to take her own life. So I'm really thinking that I have to be enough. I have to be enough. I have to be enough to make her want to live. I have to be enough to make life worth living. And it was just so much pressure that I lost myself completely. And I actually was so kind of sick with OCD. I mean, I would try and leave my dorm to go to class or to practice, and I would just be stuck flicking the lights on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off, sometimes for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, until I could get some horrible thought out of my mind. And I felt like an absolute crazy person. Yet on the outside, you know, I'm showing up at practice, I'm showing up at my classes, like everybody thinks on the outside, it looked like I had it made.
Right.
But on the inside, I was slowly dying, and I didn't know if I had the energy to keep pretending. And that's when Tony Robbins, who you spoke of earlier, who is the most powerful mentor for the last 30 years of my life. And he came into my life with his first book, Unlimited Power. And there was one sentence in there: where focus goes, energy flows. And I thought about that. Wow, what am I focusing on every moment of the day? I'm focusing on what I don't want to have happen, what I fear, what's missing, what's wrong, and what I have no control over. Other people, what they do with their life, how they respond, how they react. I was living in that. No wonder I was creating a tragedy in my life. So I thought about it in my mind. I thought, well, what if I change my focus? Will that stuff grow? If I focus on what I want, if I focus on what I have, if I focus on what I love, if I focus on what I have all the control over, which I now realize was my own experience of life in every single moment. You all get to choose what to focus on. Are you focusing on something that is bringing you pain and suffering? Or are you focusing on something that brings you hope and energy? Because it's up to you. Like, we get to go first in deciding what to focus on, the meaning we give everything that happens to us, and what we choose to do about it. And this discovery, I mean, it sounds simple, and it's not like I just said it and then it's done. You have to condition this. In every single moment, I would catch myself focusing on something I didn't want and change the channel to focus on what I did want. And it was this constant discipline. But being someone that is a varsity athlete and a great student and going to Brown University, I had discipline. We all have discipline. You're all showing up each day, take care of your kids, go to work, do your workout. That discipline, channel it to your patterns of focus, and it will change your entire life. It freed me.
Wow.
In that, I kind of woke up to realizing that I have no idea who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just been who I thought I needed to be to make life worth living, for my mom, to make my dad love me. And so one of my first discoveries when I started exploring who I was is that I was gay. And at first I'm like, oh, great. Come on, really? This is a big challenge, another big challenge. But then I thought, hey, I've discovered something about me, so I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to learn more about what I want in this life. And I was really moving along with confidence and with, excitement for my future until my father, who I'd failed to mention him to this point, but he was like my hero. He was my everything, like one of my greatest sources of love. He encouraged me. He was proud of me. He was my everything. And he called me, and he was just barely breathing on the other end of the phone and crying. And, when people can't talk because they're crying so hard. And I thought, oh my God, my dad is sick, like something's wrong. And when he spoke, he said, somebody told me that you're gay. I couldn't possibly have a daughter that's gay. Siri, I beg you, tell me right now that this is not true. And in that moment, I'm sitting here like I have to make a choice between my relationship with my father or my relationship with me for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I said, Dad, it's true, I'm gay, but I'm the same me. Like, I'm the same me. Please just love me anyway. And he hung up the phone. And for 2 years, I didn't hear from him. And after that, maybe sometimes on Christmas, he would call and just say, Merry Christmas. And now, in that moment, it made me feel like everything I had achieved, everything that I had become up until that point in time meant nothing. That I was gay. And that was a story he was telling me. The story he was telling me is that you're gay, you're worthless, you're unlovable, you'll never be successful, you'll never survive. Now, I was not willing to live that story. And it goes along with what you call trying on your own life. I wanted to live a different story. I decided that this being gay was going to be my superpower, because living fearlessly authentic, bringing all of who you are into life, that's where you're going to create magic. That's where you're going to do great things. Now, did I believe that in this moment when I lose a lifetime of love from my father when he finds out who I am? No, I did not believe that. But I was not willing to live the story he was telling me. So I needed to become that person that did believe.
But how? There were other people that really resonates. You talked about your mom, the story you were telling yourself with respect to your mom. And then now the story that your father is telling you, and you have this quiet desperation going on internally. I think a lot of people have quiet desperation for many reasons. It could be their sexuality. It could be that they are in a career that they cannot stand, but society is telling them, man, you're the executive vice president, or Amanda, you are the CEO of the company, but people don't want to do certain things. How do you take a lot of that internal desperation, whether it's family oriented, society oriented, and push through to get to what you're talking about, which is living your authentic self?
I think it starts with asking yourself the question, what do you want most in life? And at that point in time, I had suffered so deeply for my entire childhood, teenage years. I didn't want to suffer anymore. I did not want to suffer anymore. And so when I asked myself, what do you want most in life, Siri? For me, it was freedom. I just want freedom from suffering. I want to find joy. I want to be loved. Freedom. And so ask yourself, what do you want most in life? And then you can step back and say, okay, well, is this story in life that I'm living or that I'm believing, is that going to help me get what I want most?
Wow.
And inevitably the answer will be no. So then the next question is, well, then, who do I need to become to move towards what I want?
Right.
And I knew in that moment, so I reframed what happened, him rejecting me, him telling me I'm worthless. I decided, and I realize now actually, that his rejection is what gave me this hunger, this determination, this drive, this will to prove to myself, most importantly, that even as a gay woman, I could achieve extraordinary things. I could make a difference in this world. I could inspire people, and that I could be loved. Most importantly, that I could love and appreciate myself. That became my why. We talk about why we do the things that we do. So I used it as fuel, and we all know this. Somebody tells you can't do something, you can have that prevent you from even trying, or you can use it as fuel. As, hey, I'll show you, I can do it. And there is a little bit of force energy in that, wanting to prove to someone else. So I think a key in that is at some point to shift that to, I want to do this for me.
I'm glad you said that. I think that's the key. External push, validation, and motivation can only go so far.
Yeah.
And then it just has to be you with your nose to the grindstone, getting things done for whatever it is that you want, whether it's freedom. That was always my motivation as well. Intrinsic motivation, internal, which I push for. What did freedom look like to you? And then where did you end up going with all that motivation behind you?
Freedom to me was to end my own suffering. And I just didn't want to suffer anymore. And I realized now that that was up to me. It was up to changing my focus, changing the meaning I gave the things that were happening to me, thus deciding to take what happened with my father and use that to become everything that I dreamed of becoming. And it was like a week later that I watched my first triathlon. A friend was racing a triathlon. And it was just, to me, as people of all ages and sizes and abilities, but every single person had one thing in common. They were digging deep and pushing themselves, like finding themselves through this challenge. And I needed that. I needed a vehicle through which I could find me, find that love for myself, find that respect, be able to show myself that I am worthy and I can achieve and I can inspire and I can do these things that I dream of doing. But I didn't know how to swim. So when I asked my friend who was racing to coach me, she's like, but you don't know how to swim? And I said, no, but it doesn't matter because I want to do this. Did my first race, came in dead last, literally dead last, and absolutely humiliated myself. Ran the whole run with my helmet, didn't realize I had my helmet on.
Oh, man.
And got home that night, and I'll never forget, because during the race, I'd never felt so alive. I'm doing this thing that seemed impossible, and here I am, I'm doing it. That night, though, I suddenly remember and become aware of the looks on people's faces, the kids that were laughing at me.
Oh, you didn't realize it while it was going on.
Because I was in it, and I was so just in the moment. And then that night, when you get in bed at night and you suddenly remember the silly things you said or the silly thing you did or that look on that person's face, and you start questioning everything. And I'm hearing the kids' laughter and I'm crossing the line and the whole transition area is empty. And I started crying. And I went into my mom's bedroom because she had been at the race too. And she looked at me and she said, you did it. Now you can go do something that you're good at. And I looked at her and I said, I'm going to be the best in the world in this sport. And she almost cried, thinking, my daughter is insane. This is ridiculous. You have a Brown University education. You're going to go just do nothing except train for the sport that you suck at. But she said, I'll support you for the next 2 years as far as emotionally, but after that, I'm going to push you to do something that you're good at.
I want to highlight something that you just said, and I think probably 99 to 100% of the people listening to this podcast are going to resonate with it. You said you obviously went through that kind of tough triathlon, but you made it. I mean, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. Like, I don't care what place you finish in. I need to just even try one. But then your mom saying, and I hate's a strong word, but I hate this. Your mom saying, but you have a Brown degree. You have created this certain level of education, so you should go be something else. Yet here you are stating, and you did state it out loud, I'm going to be the best in the world. How do you grapple with those two things? Because you can imagine that other people are going through that as well, like what society and family is telling them to be, and then what internally you are telling yourself you want to be. How did you manage that? And did you have a support system for moving forward in that dream journey, if you will?
I had my mom, and I know she said that to get me thinking about, like, do you really want to do this? But once she knew how committed I was, she subscribed to the dream.
Love
and
it.
She followed me everywhere I went, and she also, when she found out I am gay, she said what a lot of parents do, like, I love you no matter what. I'm worried for you. I'm scared for you, but I love you no matter what. And that's just because they know what they know. They've been brought up to believe what they've been brought up to believe. And they were doing the best that they could with what they knew. But my mom totally decided to get on board with my dream, which I so appreciated. But I did, that lingering thought of those words. You have this Brown University education, and now you're going and doing this. But again, nothing has meaning except the meaning we give it. So
Right,
I gave that the meaning that this is going to give me even more energy towards wanting to make this happen.
Yep.
Because I will know that I made the right decision. It's almost like, Tony Robbins says, if you want to take the island, burn the boats. Mm-hmm. That's what I was doing. I wanted to take the island, so I burnt the boats. And I knew that I was going to do whatever it took to make this dream come true. And remember the why behind it. The why was for me to find that love, that appreciation, that respect, that worthiness from within. And that is so powerful. So for those of you that are in a similar situation where somebody's saying, no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, because that's all they know, or that's what they would do, or that's what they believe is the right thing. The only right thing is what you want.
What you want.
What you feel in your heart, what inspires you, what motivates you to do whatever it takes to make something happen. That's what you should be doing.
Thank you for explaining that. And I'm glad you articulated that way. I had a similar experience being a high-powered executive in a consulting firm, which, by the way, I don't down corporate. I was there for 25 years. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What I didn't like was what people said I was supposed to do with it. A career should be a purpose, meaning it's your God-given gift to do it, or it should be purposeful, meaning you're leveraging that career to accomplish something else. And your triathlon work was almost like me just wanting to be a street cop. Yes. And I was willing to do whatever I could do to get there. I went to my boss and said, look, I'm going to quit the firm. And she said, why? And I said, to go be a street cop in the neighborhood. And you're going to give up 80% of your salary to go be a street cop? I'm like, yeah, because I got to do that. That's a meaningful way to give back to community, but locally. At the time, I was doing like federal agent stuff overseas. I just want to be a good old street cop with sixth graders walking to school and I could help them and stuff. So I went to police academy while I was an executive and then worked full-time during the day and full-time at night for 5 years and never told anybody. But it was kind of that stated dream. Like, you had your dream of freedom to define who you were, going after, I don't know if the listeners caught it, but I caught it. It didn't strike me as it was that you wanted to be a triathlete so much as you wanted the challenge of being the triathlete when you stated it. And I just wanted the challenge of going after being a street cop. So people you can do whatever it is that you want to do and you don't have to go by other people's labels. So I just wanted to give another example for folks. So I just want to recap. So you're at Brown, you were a varsity athlete. There were a lot of things going on with the family. You found triathlons. I totally get the struggle in it. And I also, for recapping for folks, understand that a lot of people who do that work, being a triathlete or any athlete, especially in adult life, are doing it because of the intrinsic challenge to it.
Yeah.
Where is the transition or the of getting to being a motivational speaker and talking on these topics? How does that all manifest itself? Because that's another journey on top of all these journeys that you're starting to have.
Yeah, so totally unexpected, which I want everyone to know. Sometimes we want to write out what our life's going to look like, and every step that we take. So much of what's happened in the last 10 years, I could have never scripted this. I never planned for it, but I am living so on purpose, so on mission.
Beautiful.
That I've been guided to this place. So have faith in that. Whatever faith means to you, it's a faith that, yeah, you can plan and set up your life a certain way, but please be free and be aware and listen to those things that are pulling you in a direction that may not make sense. And if that pull is a strong pull that you can't understand, just go with it, go explore it, because it could lead you to your ultimate destiny. And I guess my story, not being able to swim, and 8 years later having found a way to become the best in the world, like that was a cool story, right?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I started coaching. I couldn't wait. After I won my world championship, I was ready to retire. I'd found what I was looking for, a love for myself, a respect for myself. I was ready to retire, but I stuck around one more year. I retired at #1 in the world. And I started coaching, and I coached some extraordinary athletes to Olympic medals, world championship crowns. And I was at the Hawaii Ironman World Championship with one of my athletes, Mirinda Carfrae, and she's a 3-time winner there. And it was a couple days before the race, and this woman approached me and said, "Hey, it's nice to meet you. Do you coach this athlete, Mirinda Carfrae?" And I said, "Yes, I'm her coach." And she said, "Oh, Tony Robbins would love to have her on his blog. Could I interview her today or tomorrow?" And I'm thinking, my God, it's like 3 days before the world championship. Like, Mirinda will never go for this. But I'm thinking, this guy's like my greatest mentor. Like, she has to do it. So I said, "Mirinda, I've never asked you for a favor. Just 30 minutes, please. This man means everything to me." So she did the blog. Anyways, she wins the Hawaii Ironman. I go home. A couple months later, I get an email saying, "We'd love to have you on the Tony Robbins podcast." And I said, "Oh, you're looking for Mirinda Carfrae. Here's her email. Here's her phone number. You can contact her here." And I send off the email. And they said, "No, we want you." And I'm like, "Me? You want me on the Tony Robbins podcast?" So I'm like flipping out. And I do the podcast with him, and oh my God, it was just the greatest moment of my life. I get to thank him for his influence on me and everything I'd learned from him. But we spoke for 2 hours. And this
You and Tony directly.
Yeah, he was meant to be on in the beginning and leave, but he stayed on for 2 hours. And it ended up being his most downloaded podcast in the history of his podcast. And
wow,
I couldn't believe it. Anyhow, because of that, I got invited to an event and had the most amazing time since. And I've been to like 20 Unleash the Power Withins and, 15 Date with Destinies. Like, his events are so incredibly powerful. I want it for every single human being on the planet.
Yeah.
And then there was one event called Leadership Academy where somebody couldn't speak for some reason. And he asked if I could take up that slot. It was a 90-minute slot. I'd never spoken on stage in my life, but you don't say no to Tony.
No, you take that and figure it out.
So I'm like, okay, I will find a way. And I just, oh my God, I had 2 weeks and I was up all night trying to figure out what I was going to say, writing all these different things. And the day of that event, I'll never forget, I was backstage. My wife was there. She gave me a big hug. I'm about to go on. My heart is pounding in my chest. I'm shaking all over. My hands, palms are sweaty. And I just looked up at the sky and I said, "God, I don't know. I just want to be a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be a gift to these people. I want to be a blessing somehow. Please just guide me.
Mm-hmm.
And I got out and I honestly didn't remember a word that I said, but it must have resonated. It must have been exactly what they wanted, because since then I've been doing Tony's Unleash the Power Within and Date with Destiny events. And it's the greatest privilege of my life, not just because of that man who I love with all my soul, but to serve on this mission, which is everything that I want, because all I wanted was freedom, freedom from the things that got in the way, freedom from my suffering. I wanted to be empowered. I wanted to step into my magic. I wanted to create great things in my life. That's what he does. He shows us a way. And so for me to get to serve on that mission with him is just the ultimate privilege. And like I said, you can see from the story, it was very not planned. And that's where I'm saying, everybody, we all know that presence is so important. Presence, as
Mm-hmm.
far as being
Mm-hmm.
present with the people in your life that you love, being present with the work that you're doing. Presence keeps us out of anxiety, keeps us out of worry and fear for the future. But also, presence allows us to be in a place where we can recognize little signs or whispers of your soul saying, go here or go
Yep.
there, do this
Yep.
or do that. But you can only find that in that presence. And so be open to listening to the whispers of your soul that are saying, hey, this may seem ridiculous and so not what you had planned, but listen to your gut and
You
just
got to
go.
go with it. You got to go with it. I'm going to recap 3 things real quick, and then I want to talk to you about human spirit. But one, first of all, I'm going to my first Tony Robbins event in November.
Oh my God, I'm going to see you there.
Will you be there?
I am going to be there. I'm
Ah!
on Sunday. Yes. Oh,
That's me. That's me paying attention to signs, because you just said that, and I was questioning whether or not I was going to go, and now I'm definitely going to go.
oh, you're
And I'm
going.
going with my business partners, but they're my family. It's a long story, but I will be there. That's the first thing.
I cannot wait to meet you, and I hope everyone on this call comes and we will all catch up. And it's unbelievable. Like, do
I
not
can't
deny
wait.
yourself the opportunity. It's just life-changing
Life
in the most
changing.
extraordinary ways.
I want to recap what you said about paying attention to the signs. There was, for other people as well, people, you can call it law of attraction, you can call it the reticular activating system in your brain, you can call it radar, you can call it God, you can call it spirit. But when you decide to go after whatever your purpose is, whether that's freedom, you talk about freedom, I talk about 5 freedoms: time, financial, geographic, purpose, and relationships. Things pop up, opportunities pop up. If you have a stated goal, you will start seeing things present themselves, and you have got to take advantage of them. So the 2 things that you took advantage of was, 1, speaking on that podcast, and then 2, when there was an opportunity for you to speak on stage because you were asked to do it, you did not shy away from it. You leaned into it and you're like, screw it. I will just find a way to make it happen. And look what has happened as a result. Those are the two things that I wanted to say. And then I wrote a note just recapping about freedom, because my listeners, we always talk about this notion of freedom and how it means different things to different people, but it is such a driver. And I said about 5 freedoms is what I usually talk about. And you talked about being your authentic self. I don't care how you articulate it. There is no greater driver than love and freedom, and for us to access planet and life as we were intended, period. A paycheck's not going to cut it. That is why people do things like give up $30 million jobs to go paint in Europe or something like that, because that's their version of freedom. It's not money. Money is just a tool. You have to find where you are supposed to be. So I wanted to recap that because it's very powerful. I would be remiss if I didn't just bring up quickly the power of the human spirit, because you have been through a lot. And I know that you were diagnosed with cancer at some point. So you have all these challenges related to family and career and trying to be a triathlete, and now dealing with motivating millions of people through Tony Robbins, or even on by yourself. Can you just talk through how you felt when the diagnosis came, or how you have dealt with it and what it's meant to your life?
Yeah. So this was just over 2.5 years ago. I went in for a hip replacement. I trashed my body trying to become the best in the world in triathlon. So naturally, I needed replacement parts. And they were doing the pre-op, and there was something just really off with my blood. And a few days later, they told me that I had acute myeloid leukemia with a genetic mutation that was just going to make it really difficult to treat.
Wow. Wow.
And again, it's another moment where you get to go first in deciding what story you want to live. My doctor's telling me this on speakerphone. My wife is just wailing and crying and freaking out. And I'm standing back and objectively hearing them tell me the story that this is the end. And I was not willing to live that story. Like, finally, I have the freedom I've been looking for. Finally, I'm living purely, authentically me in every moment. I have everything that I've ever dreamed of. This was not my time to go. Mm-hmm. And I declared, again, just like saying I'm going to be the best in the world, I declared I am going to survive and I am going to thrive. And in that, again, there's a moment, there's that declaration, everybody, that has to be, you have to declare it. You don't have to believe it in that moment. I mean, in that moment, I am terrified. I am devastated. I am like down on my hands and knees praying that somehow I can survive this. But when you make that decision in your mind, I am going to become that person that survives. I'm going to become that person that thrives. And in that, you start role playing that future you, that future me that's going to survive and thrive. What would she do? What would she believe about this? Mm-hmm. Well, she would believe that, you know, everything I'm going through now is preparing me for what I asked for. And what I asked for is to have a beautiful impact in the world around me, help people step into their best lives, heal from no longer suffer, all these things. This is preparing me for that, because what I learn, who I become in overcoming this, is going to allow me to live my ultimate purpose and mission. I had to give it an empowering meaning, because future me, the one that's going to survive, she would do that. Future me would set up habits and rituals that would see me be as strong as I possibly could be for all the treatment, for everything I was going to go through. Future me would discipline her thoughts in every single moment, from what's wrong to what's right. I have great doctors. I have a donor. I've got 2 donors. I've got my amazing wife who loves me. I have these horses that are going to help me heal. Focus on what you have. Focus on what you want. I want to survive. I want to thrive. Focus on what's good. Focus on what's right. And most importantly, future me that knew that she was going to survive and thrive would sit in gratitude in as many moments as possible, because gratitude is the bridge from despair to hope. If you can find something to appreciate during the toughest, darkest times of your life, if you can find something to appreciate, that becomes the thing that pulls you out of your despair, that gives you the strength, the energy to actually not only overcome the challenge and survive it, but to thrive on the other side.
I learned that it's physiologically impossible to be angry when you have gratitude for something in the moment. So it just changes your state immediately. I have never heard it the way that you just articulated it. Gratitude is, you said from despair to hope, but what you say is the bridge.
Gratitude is the bridge from despair to hope. And I came up with that actually in the hospital as I lay in my bed, like just so sick and like hanging by a thread. And I would catch myself and think that focusing on how sick I am, how weak I am, how terrified I am, that is not going to help me heal. But if I look over at my amazing mom who slept on the couch for 30 nights and never left my side, and I felt so grateful, and my wife who's just always there for me, I felt so grateful, my donors, the umbilical cord, my sister, the doctors, and I felt grateful. Suddenly, that gave me hope. Suddenly, that gave me a little bit of energy. Suddenly, that started directing me to the vision boards that I had covering every inch of my hospital room, reminding me of what I'm fighting for and what's on the other side of this. Gratitude put me in a position where I could actually heal. So it was the bridge from despair to hope, because that was my life preserver. And gratitude always is. And the best way to get there is to think about, what can I appreciate? You may be in the middle of some huge, horrible thing happening. Okay, what can I appreciate here? I can appreciate there's 10 people here wanting to help.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's how you back yourself. That's how you participate in your own rescue. And that's something we all have inside of us. Again, it's just disciplining your focus to look for something that you can appreciate about this moment right now.
You've been through a lot. When I kind of run your journey back in my head, the thing that sticks out to me the most is your dad. And I'm wondering, does gratitude pop up, or is that relationship repaired?
It is. And here's something I want everyone to think about. That person that hurt you, maybe it's a boss that fired you, maybe it's a parent that rejected you, maybe it's a partner that broke up with you. That person, or maybe it's even worse than that. If you're going to blame that person for all the bad in your life, you need to also blame them for all the good.
Mm.
And this is thanks to Tony Robbins at his Date with Destiny event. I'll never forget. I'm sitting there and he's talking about the people that have hurt us and saying that we need to forgive them for us, because forgiveness frees us. And he said, you may actually want to thank them. And I'm thinking, thank him for what? For breaking my heart in a million pieces?
Mm.
But then I thought about it. His rejection gave birth inside of me to this insatiable hunger, to this determination, to this drive, to this will that saw me take on this impossible dream, not being able to swim at 23 years old and 8 years later becoming the best in the world in this sport. It has seen me become coaching athletes to Olympic medals, world championship crowns. It's seen me overcome AML, this deadly disease. His rejection was a gift. And so I called him and I said, Dad, you broke my heart. Wow. You just absolutely broke my heart, but I forgive you. And I actually want to thank you. I want to thank you for being exactly the father I needed you to be, to become the woman that I am so proud to be today. Now he said how sorry he was, how much pain he's been in for the last 25 years. He talked about how it's all he knew, like that's how he was brought up to think this, but he thinks so differently now. He's so proud of me. He's so happy to see everything I'm doing in my life. So I had my father back. And now we speak every single day. But that's forgiveness amazing. Was a key. Now he could have just never talked to me again after that. But the fact is that in forgiving, we free ourselves, because I want everybody to hear me on this. When we blame people for our pain, that blame that we carry becomes our excuse as to why we haven't achieved what we hope to achieve, why we don't have the loving, deep relationships that we wish we had. That blame is your excuse. So when you forgive that person and you look at who wouldn't you be today if that hadn't happened? Think about your greatest strengths, your greatest qualities, my resilience, my determination, my insatiable hunger. That came from his rejection. That came because he was who he was. Who wouldn't you be in your life if it wasn't for that person that hurt you?
Exactly.
And once you look at that, then I want you to forgive that person so that you become free and empowered and can now proceed living the life that you so deserve. And that's one where you achieve your highest goals, where you love deeply and fearlessly, where you live the life that you deserve. But right now, if there's anger and resentment that you're holding on to that is only holding you back, don't do that. Forgive. I feel so blessed that I got my father back, and he's amazing. Now he's over the top. He walked down the street with my wife and he's saying, this is the best marriage I've ever seen. You want a good marriage? You just watch these girls. Like now he's kind of, and you may not get that from the person
true.
That you forgive. Yeah. So remember that forgiveness is for you and it frees you. And I encourage, if there's somebody listening to this, go do it right now. Go do it right now, because you will never be ready. The time will never be perfect. But what Tony did is, in that moment, he said, go do this. I walked outside, sat on a street corner, called my dad, and I was free. So I'm asking you to do that.
Thank you for asking us to do that. Thank you for going on the journey that you've been on. Thank you for all that struggle. And more so, because my own purpose is just to try to help people try life on their own way. And I know you get on stages and speak on podcasts and help animals too. We didn't even get into that, but in a big way, but help animals too. Thank you for trying to give back to people constantly and making them better. For the folks that are listening who are trying to try life on your own way, Siri talked quite a bit about forgiveness. I'm going to try and exercise that a bit. I'm still angry at certain people for certain things. I need to absorb that and forgive. As much as we have the bad stuff in life, sometimes the bad stuff is responsible for the good stuff in life. You talked about that quite a bit. Something you talked about at the beginning that can help a lot of people: where focus goes, energy flows. If you're going to focus on all the things that you can't do, you'll never be able to spend time on the things that you can do. So focus on the things that you truly want. There's an internal struggle all the time. Sometimes that's the struggle we need to be working on, as opposed to the external struggle. And freedom, in Siri's word, what is it that you want most out of life? Go do that. Go focus on that. We have one shot on this big blue marble. You may as well go balls to the wall for that thing. And obviously in your journey, Siri, the triathlon work, going to Brown, being the varsity athlete, spending time coaching people. I like the coaching more than I even like the speaking, to be honest. Like, it's just because I know the deep work that's involved with that, especially when I do my one-on-one coaching. But what is it that you want most in life? Go do that on a regular basis. I think you have dropped so many nuggets for how people can try life on their way. Go do what it is that makes them happy. You are clearly unapologetic about your life, in that you're going to go after the challenges that you want with your amazing wife and everything that you do. I just want to thank you for spending some time with us and imparting that knowledge on my folks. And just as a parting thought, if there was one last thing you would leave them with, now that you kind of have heard me preach about this try life on aspect, and you've done it in your own way, for the folks who are trying to get the motivation to do something that they've always wanted to do, what would that one thing be?
Start now.
Just start now.
Start now. Don't wait. It's never going to be the perfect time. Do one thing right now, today, that takes you one step closer to doing that thing. Start now. Start now. Life is short. You have everything you need inside of you already. Just make the decision, declare it, and start.
I love it.
I'd say.
I love it. Siri, how do these folks find you if they would like to learn more information about you?
I would love to have you follow me on Instagram at Siri Lindley, Facebook at Siri Lindley, Twitter the same. Also, if you'd like to follow our work with horses and horses healing humans, it's at Believe Ranch and Rescue. And look out for my new book coming out in June 2023 called Finding a Way, Taking the Impossible and Making It Possible. Everything that I've talked about today, and basically how I've overcome every challenge and how I've achieved the impossible. This is a book that shows you how to do the exact same in your own life. And I'm super proud of it. And so have a look out for that in June. And yeah, just stay in touch. And thank you for listening, everyone. Maurice, for this wonderful conversation and for being you. The word that you're spreading is so important and such a gift.
It is my pleasure. And thank you for sharing with us. And that was phenomenal. Like, I'm going to have to go back myself and rewatch it, because me having to facilitate, I can't absorb everything that I'm hearing. I have all the gratitude in the world for you and your journey, and I know my listeners do too. And thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much, Maurice. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Okay, this is Maurice Philogene. We'll see you on the next episode of Try Life On. Until then, have a fantastic day.